Hey everybody, Syntax77 back with you. Just hanging out in my backyard. Once again, 2 videos in a row. Great weather, nice and sunny, so I figured I'd film a little video. Just hanging out here like I always do in broad daylight with the headlamp on. Just keeping it natural and honest. This is how I hang out. But since we're here, I figured maybe we can talk about this headlamp. This is actually the Olight HS2 headlamp. It is a lamp that I've had for a couple weeks now. Been testing it out and just actually got back from a trip to the Adirondacks where I used this exclusively as my lighting source. At least my personal lighting source. We also had a lantern, my wife and I. But I put it through its paces as well as around the house doing some chores and stuff, and I just want to share it with you. Now, this is marketed by Olight. It's kind of targeted demographic would be running and extreme sports in their own words. So like a runner's headlight. But I kind of saw that and thought that seems a running headlamp probably pretty applicable to what I do, which is not running, but backpacking and hiking. I want something light yet powerful and several modes that I can wear, and it won't really, you know, when I'm moving around, seem like much of a weight on my head, because I do have other headlamps that are quite powerful, but they're also a bit of extra weight both on your head, which can feel unnatural sometimes, as well as in your pack, which, you know, it all adds up and that's not too comfortable. And then of course I do have headlamps that are even smaller than this, or I'd say lighter. This guy is 4 ounces, and I have, like, say the first headlamp I ever got, probably like an ounce-ish less than this. It was a little cheap $15 guy. It got the job done, but not a lot of light. But I got it done, which should also point out something. This is a higher end headlamp, so if you're interested in something with a little more power but still keeps the weight down, this may be something to look into. If you're just getting into backpacking and you're kind of on a budget, or you don't know what you need yet, do you need to jump into something this fancy? No, absolutely not. You go for what I was just talking about. I think it was like a, forget the company, it was either P-Tech or Nano. Real simple, but that was probably like, say, a 50 lumen max headlamp, if that. I remember it being pretty dim. Now this one goes up to 400 lumens, and like I said, it's 4 ounces. By comparison, the one that my wife uses, or at least used to use, because after that Adirondacks trip she told me that this is being stolen, or she kind of gave me that impression. So this will be hers after this video for some reasons I'll get into. But she, for instance, carries this. It is 3.25 ounces, so it's 3/4 of an ounce less than this guy. But for that 3/4 of an ounce savings, you do take a hit on the other stats. As far as lumens go, this is 150. This one is 2.5 times brighter at 400 max. And in terms of runtime, if I run both of these at 50 lumens, which they both are capable of, this one will conk out after around 4 hours and 20 minutes. This one will go 18 hours. So that's a big difference for that 3/4 of an ounce in terms of runtime as well as lumen output. This, of course, is half the cost. So trade-offs in life, right? This is a Phoenix HL23 that she's been carrying for a while, but I'll tell you what happened on that trip. The reason that she's probably stealing this one is she was sucking down the AA batteries that run this thing quite readily, because 4 ounces or so on low, and then you throw in the fact that sometimes she would run this at the high 150. It only has 2 choices, and she'd probably nail this thing after, I think, around 3 hours or so. I remember having to switch it before the night was even over, because, you know, we get to camp at like, well, we got to camp early actually, but it gets dark around 7:30 or so, and we would stay up because it's more of a camping trip rather than, we're not like through hiking and going to bed early. We'd stay up till like 12-ish at least, and that's more than 4 hours. This was getting knocked out. This thing was going strong. Now, why is that? Because on this, if I let you see in the back here, can you see there? I have the battery pack on the back. That's one of the things that makes this kind of weight balance out, and that is a 2000 milliamp battery pack right there. And it's got the little button on the side there. If I click that, it'll show me with those lights there. Hopefully you can see in the sun, it's on a level 3 out of 4, at least the last time I checked it. Yeah. So another cool thing about this compared to a lot of other headlamps, you can actively see the amount of power you have left. So like in my wife's instance where she was running out of power, or with this light, if she was using it, you could easily, and I was doing this during my usage, just check it and you can see, oh man, I already nailed this thing 25%. Maybe I should be a little more conscious of using the low mode instead of high, and we'll get into modes in a second. It also, you'll see there, has the rubber part that flips back, and that is what protects the USB charging port there. So you can plug in a standard micro USB wall charger or USB battery pack that you have for charging your devices right into there and recharge this. Charge time's around 3.5 hours, and again, it's 2000 milliamps with a max runtime of 18 hours when running at its lowest mode, which is 50 lumens. Now, remember when I said there seemed to me at first that a running headlamp would be right up the alley of a backpacking headlamp, and for the most part it is, but there are some things I noticed that would set this apart in terms of things I wish it could do specific to backpacking, hiking, and camping versus running. And we'll get into that as I go through the functions on this thing. So let's talk about that. This, if you notice, has two LEDs in there. One they call low, one they call high. I actually refer to them as flood and spot because one of them is going to be a softer, wider beam that is good for peripheral vision right in front of you, and the other is going to throw a narrower beam that goes further. You can also run both of them at the same time, which is how you get the highest lumen output of 400 lumens. And basic operation on this, and the operation is pretty basic and simple, it has this button here that runs along the side, which is also where you plug in the power, which, quick tip, when I first got mine, this takes a couple plugs to break in. Not a big deal, but I was not pushing mine all the way in. I feel silly about it now, but I was. See, it goes in so easy now, but when I first got it, it would go about to here, and it would feel like it was snug, and I thought it was in. But click it all the way. That also gets you your best water resistance, of course, right? But at that point, it's seated and it's ready to go. It's drawing power from the battery pack. But anyway, you're just going to click that button once, and it turns it on. You click it again, it'll switch between low and high, and every time you double click it, it'll switch between the 3 different combinations of LEDs, which would be turn that off, which to turn it off, by the way, you just want to hold it down and it'll dim out and turn off. If you run both of the LEDs at once, you're going to get 400 lumens, the max output, for 2 hours and 12 minutes. If you run both of those together on low, you're going to get 100 lumens for 9 hours. And then moving on to the single LED modes, they are identical in terms of runtime and lumen output. So if you run either the flood beam or the spot beam by itself on low, you're going to get 50 lumens for 18 hours. That's your max runtime right there. Or you're going to get on high 200 lumens for 4.5 hours. Not bad. So I found it quite useful in the woods on my backpacking trip as well as my testing around the house. Now, one thing to think about, will point out, is there's a couple things this is missing that at first I was a little surprised by, but then I thought, well, if this is aimed towards running, it does make sense. So if you're looking for running, check this out, and if you're into backpacking, just keep this in mind. It doesn't have a memory. And I have had several Olights now, and I noticed that all of them, until I got to this one, have a memory, which means whatever mode it's in, when you turn it off, next time you come back, it's going to be in that mode again. This one does not appear to do that. I don't see anything in the book about it, and it doesn't do that in real life when I'm using it. So at first I was a little thrown off by that, but if you think about it, a runner is not going to be switching modes as much. It kind of makes sense. They're just going to set their mode, and they're in the zone, they're running. I get that. But as a backpacker, I do like the memory because I'm turning this guy on and off. I keep grabbing this. That's something I have to learn muscle memory wise. The button is over here. But anyway, when I'm in the woods, if I'm night hiking, I'm going to have it on all the time, like a runner most likely would. When I'm at camp though, a lot of times I don't want to blind my friends, or I want to preserve my night vision, and I'm just going to turn, there I go again, I'm just going to turn this guy on when I need it and then turn it back off. So I'm often turning it on and off. And what happens is every time I turn it on by default, it goes into the highest mode, which is both LEDs at max. That's fine, just takes a couple clicks, and after a while I probably would get used to just doing this instinctively, because I usually like to run at the lowest mode to conserve battery, and on this it is 50 lumens. So really you just turn it on, then double click to switch modes, and then click one more time to switch down to low, and you're in your low single LED mode. It's something I started to get used to towards the end of my backpacking trip, but I do prefer to have that memory mode. Again, I get that this is more for somebody that's going to leave it on for the duration of like some sort of sport, but for backpacking, I would say that'd be nice. Actually, there's a few things I think Olight could do to make this specifically a backpacking headlight, and one of those things would be throw a memory in. The other thing that I would find important is this has, let me turn this off here, hold that down, and it just faded out. I can see the reflection in the lens. Another thing that I noticed on this is the lowest it does is 50 lumens and the highest is 400. 400 I think is fine for this weight backpacking light. 400 at a campsite is actually pretty decent, especially because of how light and balanced this is. What I would like on a backpacking or camping headlamp is less lumens than 50. I like the 50, but I also like when you're hanging out at camp and you're not trying to blind your friends and you're not actively like running on a trail, you're just at camp. It's not as critical safety wise. A 5 or 10 lumen output would be great. That's also what I find is a nice output for hanging on the ridgeline in your hammock, if you hammock camp, or just hanging in the top of your tent. You don't need a full 50 lumens. You could bounce the 50 lumens off the top, but I kind of like a 5 or a 10. This doesn't do that, so it's just something to keep in mind for you backpackers out there. If that's critical to you, something to think about. I got used to it, and again, because of the 2000 milliamp battery pack, it didn't impact runtime tremendously. I'm still getting 18 hours out of a charge. But that is something that I wish that it did. If they made one that went down a little lower, I think that would be cool. And then a third thing that I think would really set this thing apart and put it over the edge as a backpacking headlamp is I rarely use that full 400 lumens. If I'm night hiking and I'm looking for trailblazes, absolutely I'm going to use the 400. But when I'm around camp, I don't need that much. So I find myself almost always, like I was saying earlier, switching it down to a lower level. I think it would be really cool if this all right, so on this mode, if you triple click it, I didn't mention that yet, brings up another function that I haven't mentioned yet. If you have this on, and if I triple click it, it goes into SOS mode, which is always good to have. But I'm just daydreaming here. What I think would be cool, turn that off. There we go. I think it would be cool if by default when it comes on, it's in a single beam low, and if I triple click it, I get the full high beam because I don't use that much. And then, well, I'm not sure how you'd program the SOS mode, but I'm just thinking out loud. It's just a thought as I've used this. But overall, I do like the amount of power this puts out. So I'll take that 400 lumens coming on first. I'll just get used to switching out of it. But that would be cool if there's a way to kind of save that as like a turbo mode, like on some of my other flashlights where I'd only get that super high power if I do like a double or triple click. And another reason I think that would be cool is because this is another difference between running and hiking. So again, if you're looking for this as a running headlamp, I think you're going to be just fine because you're going to set it and forget it most likely, right? But when I'm on the trail and I'm night hiking, I usually do a flood beam because I want my peripherals because I don't want to twist an ankle or something. I often, though, will look and try to spot a trail marker. And I will tell you from experience that the spot beam on this actually does throw considerably further, and I was able to pick up those trail markers much quicker and easier when I was looking for them down a long section of trail by using the spot. So I really like that. That is a definite plus for this in terms of backpacking. Flood mode for when you're night hiking peripheral, and then click it over and switch into the spot mode if you want an extra, say, 30 meters of throw to be able to see a reflective trail marker, or just further down a rock pile, some cairns, some sort of navigation item that you're looking for. That's really cool. But of course, I had to also cycle through that high mode. It'd be really cool if I could just pop back and forth between the two different beams with some sort of different configuration. And again, I know these are things that make it more complicated because this is just, it actually does a lot considering there's just a single button there, but just daydreaming today. Overall though, I do think this is quite handy compared to one that doesn't have two different types of beams. It just has the intensity of the beam. This definitely has an advantage for finding those trail markers when you need to go into that mode. And then for the most part, I just leave it in the wide beam on low. And it should be noted that I got kind of spoiled using this, and that's why I'm bringing up all these things that I found out about it, because believe me, I was watching my wife use this, her 150 max. She was trying to conserve battery, so I think she was on 50, but either way, she just did not have the same amount of spill that I did, nowhere near. She pretty much, her widest looked like my spot beam on this. And when she went into high, it was good, but it was nowhere near me putting even the flood on 50. As a matter of fact, I had her in front of me and we put my flood on behind her, and that gave her peripheral vision. So I was actually backing her up with the light from this. That's how much more powerful it was than our AA guy, which was chewing through AA's. Speaking of running out of battery power, this is, as I alluded to earlier, USB chargeable. So you just take this and you pop your charger in the back there. But here's something else to think about. You don't have to necessarily charge it up. If you're in a pinch and you're just ready to go and you carry a USB pack like I do, especially because I'm doing a lot of filming, just unplug this part here and plug your USB charger directly into this with the standard micro USB wire. And now you can run this lamp right off of your USB charger without waiting for any charge. You can just set it up, have an area light for around camp, just let it sit. and you're good to go. Another reason that this is handy here, this separation ability on here, is because there's not necessarily a lockout mode on here like some flashlights have, where you do some sort of button sequence and it locks out. If you want to make sure this thing doesn't accidentally turn on when it's in your pack, this is what I was doing, I just take it apart so that when it's in my backpack, there's no way it's getting turned on because the two wires are separated. So that's about it. It is comfortable. The band is nice. It's obviously adjustable. I probably don't need to go into that, right? But it does feel good. There's no top band. Some people are into that. But for me, a single band around the side, I've always found is pretty good. It's usually a little more solid when you have a top band, but because this thing is so light, I mean, even if you're running, which is the intended purpose, I really doubt it's going to slide down because you're only got 4 ounces in your head. Part of that is the strap. The light in the battery pack itself is probably only 3 ounces or something. Pretty cool. I'd say if you're looking for enhanced capabilities, you got a little more budget, and you want to spring for something that's going to have some better modes in the woods for finding trail markers, searching around at night for camp. Basically, if you're somebody who night hikes, go for this. If you just want some light around camp and you have a friend, a nerd like me, that carries higher powered lighting, and you just want something to be able to find your food at night and brush your teeth, then you could probably get away with a smaller, less functional light for around the same weight. But it definitely has its positives for running and night trail hiking, etc. So I think that probably just about covers it. The Olight HS2 rechargeable headlight system. Till next time, I'm Syntax77, and you have fun out there.